The first thing you do when you start a new quilting project is pick some beautiful fabrics. In this video I'm going to share the 3 main things that I always keep in mind when picking fabrics for foundation paper piecing. Hi there, my name is Irene and you are watching the Sugaridoo channel, the place where I share quilting videos, hoping to inspire you to create and do the things you love. Today I'm starting with a new mini quilt and we are diving into the subject of picking your fabrics for quilting. I'm going to share the 3 things that I keep in mind to always make sure that I'm happy with my fabric choices. And at the end of this video, I'm also going to share where I got my inspiration for color combinations. This is the I Love My Bike mini quilt, which is now available in my shop as a PDF pattern. And these blocks, the bike and the heart, are also part of the Sugaridoo Sampler. That is a bundle with more than 35 paper piecing patterns, and that is also available as an ebook PDF in my webshop. So now that I decided on a new project, I need to pick out some fabrics. And that can be a very fun thing to do, but also a bit hard or challenging maybe to pick out the right fabrics and to make sure that you like the way your project is going to look. And especially for foundation paper piecing, the pattern that I'm now going to make with the bikes, you do want the things in your design, like the bikes and the hearts, to stand out from the background. So here are 3 things that I always keep in mind when I'm picking my fabrics for foundation paper piecing to make sure that I'm always happy with my fabric choices. First of all, you want some contrast in your fabrics. So you have a background fabric and main fabrics. And what I mean by that is the background fabric is the fabric behind, in this example, the bikes. And then you have the fabrics which you use for the bikes and the hearts, which I call my main fabric. So you want some contrast between those two. And contrast can be in different ways. You could go with colors, so contrasting colors, or you could go with the intensity of a color. So you could work with one color like blue and use a light blue background and then a dark blue main fabric. That will also make a contrast. So contrast, first of all, is important to keep in mind when picking your fabrics. When you're making a very light background and also a very light colored bike, then it would not stand out as much. The second thing you can keep in mind is using a low volume background. A low volume fabric is, for example, this one. It's shades of gray on gray, or maybe this one by Karen Lewis. So it is a fabric where I think not much is happening. So you have some similar tones, or maybe even a complete solid fabric. A low volume fabric makes it very easy to make that contrast that I was talking about. When you're using a more busy kind of fabric, like this one for example, then it is a little bit harder to make your block that you're making stand out. So with this one you can still do that. You could imagine maybe a bright yellow colored bike on this, and then you could still see the bike. But to match your fabrics and pick out fabrics, it is quite easy to start with a low volume background. And it's not that, of course, that's the only way, it's not the right way, but it's just easy to make sure that your foundation paper piecing project is going to pop. Okay, so that is making contrast and low volume background. Well, the point with the low volume background, you could also go the other way around. When you would do a not low volume background, like this one for example, and you would go with a solid main fabric, then I guess that could also work. So you could play with that, but that again makes contrasts, so contrast between a very busy fabric and a fabric which is just one color. So I think contrast is key here. And then the third thing that I like to look at for foundation paper piecing, especially when you're paper piecing with small pieces, is to not use fabric as main fabric, which contain the color of the background. So let me show you. Let's say, for example, that we are using a white background, and that I would be using this lovely fabric as my main fabric. Well, as you can see, there is white in this fabric. So you will have pieces with a lot of white, which you place on your background. And when you're using especially small pieces, like for example the frame of our bike, then it could be that parts of your foundation paper piecing pieces will disappear in the background because there are similar colors over here. So I kind of watch out for using fabrics as main fabrics that contain the color that I'm using in my background. So you have that, of course, in different amounts. So this one also contains white, but way less white than the pink one. So using this one as my bike probably won't give any trouble, but this one could. So using main fabrics that are not similar to your background fabrics. Again, that's about keeping that contrast. But that's the thing that I keep in mind when picking my fabric. So if you would want to use this as your main fabric, then I could imagine that working really well when you're picking a different color for your background. So not going for white, but going for gray or for something else. Okay, that's the things that I like to keep in mind. Now it's time to pick out some fabrics. And for that, I'm going to start by picking up my color scheme. What I love to do for choosing my colors is browsing Pinterest. I love Pinterest, and also for picking colors, it's perfect. When you search for color palette in Pinterest, or if you have a specific color in mind, you can search for a color palette with, I don't know, orange or teal or something like that. Then a lot of ideas will pop up, and you have great color combinations that others already made, from which you can draw inspiration. I save the color palettes that I like on a board, and then I'll just look at it and see what pops out for me with the project that I want to make in mind. So now that's the bike and the hearts. So I'm looking for a color palette for that. So probably with more than 2 different types of colors. At this moment, I'm in love with pinks in combination with teal. Like this one over here, and also this one over here. But I also love this Crib Mobile. I really like it. So adding in some grays, I guess, would be nice. Then this one has gray and teal and a yellowish orange. So I guess the gray and teal and then maybe 1 or 2 other colors is what I want to go for in this project. When I saw that Crib Mobile, I thought maybe I could go for a darker gray background this time. Most of the times I go for a light background, mostly white, but I think it would be interesting to make something with a dark gray background and then use some main colors that pop out so that are nice and bright. And then I could also do some hand quilting or machine quilting with a bright thread. So I guess using this fabric could really have some nice opportunities also for the quilting. So this is going to be my background fabric, and now I need to add at least some shades of teal or turquoise, and then see what I'm going to add, maybe some yellowish, oranges or pink tones. So since I've already picked my background, I'm just going to lay it out, and I'm using this gray to place my fabrics on and see what I want to use. Okay, let's go. So here we have some pinks and some more pinks. And I guess I want to have 3 of each color. That's nice for the bike, and also for the hearts it's nice to have a little bit of color variation. That is nice. And here I also have some oranges and yellows. So I guess overall I really like this look, so I am going to use all of those in the quilt. Not all of the fabrics, but all of the color groups. So I'm going to go for these pinks, teal, and I'm going to pick either yellowish or oranges. And then I have a light gray for the tires or for details on the bikes. So this one I'm going to keep. So that's the first one. And then let's see for the pinks. Okay, there we have our pinks, and then let's pick out this one. I guess I could either match these two or just go for these 3. And that's funny because I didn't intentionally pick these. These are a bit more greenish and these are a bit more bluish. But I do really like these together. So I'm just going to see if I have something that goes with this, and if not, I'm going to pick those. Well, I think I'm not going to go with those teals after all. This is a bit more greenish, but I really like it. So I could go with these. However, this one is bluer than these two. So this would be a great match, I guess. These are all really in the same colors. I do really like this fabric, so I want to go with that one. I guess I like these together. Let's go for this. Okay, then we need to pick some oranges of yellows, and when I see this together, I guess I'm going with yellows. It's nice and bright, and orange makes it a little bit warmer. I do like yellow with the pink more, so it's going to be yellow. Yeah, I'm going for the stripy one. There we go. And there I have a set of fabrics. So I guess they will all work with the gray. And one will pop a little bit more than the other, of course. So the lighter ones will pop out a bit more. But even this blue, it's still enough contrast with the gray to make that work. So while I was selecting my fabrics, some other things popped to my mind that I wanted to share with you. So what I see from the fabrics that I pick is that I really like to use fabrics with small prints for foundation paper piecing. At least for using smaller blocks or blocks with small pieces. Because then you won't have a big print in your fabric from which you will only use a small piece, so not all the colors from the fabric will be incorporated in the pieces you cut for your pattern. And when, for example, using a fabric like this, which has a very tiny print, that is really nice for using on smaller pieces in foundation paper piecing. And something else I noticed is that most of my fabrics have only 1 or 2 colors, and that is more often than not a color and white, or a color and something light. So here you have the teal and then white details on it, and these all have white details on it, and this one is just 2 tones of the same color. And I do intentionally select those when I go to a wholesale or when I buy fabrics online. I do select those because those really work well in foundation paper piecing. It's like coloring in a pattern with a pencil, and when that pencil is multicolored, you will get a pretty strange drawing. So when you have fabrics that are kind of boring, maybe if you would use them in a bigger quilt, for smaller quilts and for foundation piecing patterns, they work really great. Let me show you something. This is an owl from my Sugaridoo Sampler, and I enlarged this block. So this is one foundation piecing block. But as you can see, I used a fabric for the belly that has multiple colors. But that is because this whole piece is one piece. So then you could pick a nice fabric that makes the whole thing more interesting. But when I would want to make this one and then a small owl that is maybe this big of a block, when you would then use the same fabric with that print, then the print would kind of disappear or not come out so nicely. So you can print your pattern that you want to make at the size that you want to make it, and then see how big are my pieces and how big of the prints do I want in comparison with the size of my pieces. Yeah, so I think that's all that I use and keep in mind when selecting fabric for my quilting in foundation piecing. So that is my fabric pool for this mini quilt. I'm super excited to get started with it, and in my next video I am going to cut those fabrics, and I'll show you exactly how I cut my fabrics to waste as little fabric as possible. And also some of these fabrics are directional, like this one for example. So when I cut my fabrics, I already pay attention to that to make sure that these lines go in the direction that I want to when I make the block. So I'm also going to show you how I do that and how I make sure that it goes in the quilt exactly the way I want it to. I'm very happy with my color combinations. Let me know in the comments below if you have a go-to color combination, or if you just go crazy with every new quilt that you pick something completely different. I would love to hear. And hope to see you again next week in a new video. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye!